What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation that we have right now, ladies and gentlemen. Hurricane Milton is rapidly intensifying at this current point. You just heard me right. This is Hurricane Milton, not Tropical Storm Milton anymore, Hurricane Milton. And we've been watching a rapidly escalating situation over the last day or so. So we're going to have to pay very close attention to this, as this poses a very big threat to Florida. We're also keeping a very close eye on Kirk and Leslie as well, although not as much of an eye, and then this area of interest out here in the Caribbean Sea. But the main focus for today's video will obviously be on Hurricane Milton. So we're going to have to dive right into it. Right now, here are the cliff notes that we have. This is now an 80-mile-per-hour hurricane. At 10 a.m. this morning, this was at 65. Air Force hurricane hunters find Milton rapidly intensifying into a hurricane. That's the headline from the NHC. Pressure is 988 millibars, and it's actually, based on recon, a little bit lower than that, because last I checked, it was around 986 at the last pass. So this system is rapidly exploding, and we're going to need to pay very close attention to it. Hurricane force winds extend outward 20 miles from the center, and tropical storm force winds extend outward 80 miles from the center. So what you're noticing here, the winds are lagging behind the pressure a little bit, because 988 millibars for an 80-mile-per-hour hurricane, okay, you'd assume that it would be a little bit of a larger system, right? Well, this is a very small and very compact hurricane right here, as you can see on satellite right here. And we'll get to the satellite analysis in just a little bit. But the point is that one of two things is going to end up happening. Either the storm is going to rapidly intensify and become this buzzsaw and get up to potentially very major hurricane strength, like potentially the Category 4s, like maybe even the high-end Cat 4s at that, or the wind field is going to push out greatly and make things even worse in terms of storm surge and then start to rapidly intensify. One of those two things is going to happen, and right now it is rapidly intensifying and doing the latter. So here's the discussion that they have from this morning. This is the 10 a.m. discussion. So this is when Milton was still a tropical storm. Satellite and aircraft indicate that Milton is strengthening. A large burst of convection is occurring on the northern semicircle of the storm, with lots of expanding outflow. The last fix from the NOAA hurricane aircraft show a pressure of 991. This was 3 hours ago, and winds around 65 knots. Valued out to the surface, they were at 55 knots, which is 65 miles per hour, 3 hours ago. Here's the cliff notes that we got right here. The Hurricane Hunter aircraft crew reported that an eye wall has formed on the last center fix, suggesting that the system is ready to intensify quickly. Well, it's already doing that right now. Given the track over the very deep warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico and little shear over the next couple of days, rapid intensification is explicitly forecast, and the new NHC prediction could still be conservative over the central Gulf of Mexico. And what we had right here was winds peaking out at 125 miles per hour. That's easily going to get a lot higher, because they were expecting a hurricane in the next 12 hours at 75 miles per hour. We're already at 80, and we're only 3 hours into this after this advisory. So here's the next thing. This is very important. The biggest question actually seems to be the intensity as Milton approaches Florida, with much of the guidance showing a notable increase in shear. While some weakening is anticipated, the shear could help transition Milton to be a large hurricane at landfall, and impacts could spread out over a big area. Regardless of the details, there is an increasing confidence that a powerful hurricane with life-threatening hazards will be affecting portions of Florida's west coast around the middle part of this week. Residents there should closely monitor the system and listen to local officials. If you are told to evacuate, evacuate. If you are told to shelter in place, shelter in place. These local officials know best. Don't ask me if I should evacuate. I'm going to say defer to the local officials. They know more than I do, and I think it's more important that they guide you through it than I. But that's the situation we have with the latest discussion right here. So we're going to have to pay attention to that as well. Let's go ahead and pull up the cone. As of right now, there are tropical storm warnings in effect for parts of the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. There's going to be hurricane watches in effect in the next little while. We're looking at hurricane watches in effect probably in the next, I'd say, 12 to 24 hours or so for much of Florida, including Tampa Bay, including Sarasota, including Fort Myers, including all those areas right there as the system continues to rapidly escalate and rapidly intensify. According to the latest track, this system does look like it's going to be making landfall, I would say, Wednesday morning or Wednesday early afternoon. So if you're in Florida and watching this, you need to start preparing right now. This is about 3 days away from making landfall, and this is expected to make landfall as a major hurricane, according to the National Hurricane Center. Personally, I think their forecast is a bit conservative, and even the NHC agrees with me to some extent right there. And I do think that right now this is on track of easily becoming a Category 4 hurricane based on the rate of intensification, based on what hurricane hunters are finding out in the with Recon right now, which, by the way, let's go ahead and show you that right here. Here's the latest that they have right now. They found a pressure of 986 millibars in the eye. 986 millibars. Hold on, let me go ahead and try to actually get that drops on for you. They found a pressure of 986 millibars at the surface at 13 knots. So basically, if you do the standard deduction, that's a 985 millibar system right there, and their extrapolated pressure has bottomed out around 983. So the pressure is definitely starting to bottom out. We already have an eyeball easily able to tell where it is based on what the hurricane hunters are indicating. The mission actually for Mission 2 is actually finished, so hopefully they get another plane out because we need that data and we need that information, because at this point all we're going to be able to go off of is satellite estimates, and based on the satellite we're looking at right now, it's already pretty crazy how much this system has escalated. Let me show you what we had in the last hour. We had a bunch of convection firing up on the northern side of the system right here, and then starting to wrap around very rapidly around the eye of the storm. And that is not a good sign if you do not want rapidly intensifying storms. That's a very bad sign that something really big is going on right now. And I want to go ahead and pull up the latest frames too, just to see if I can get the latest and see how what the progression of it is. Oh yeah, it's pretty much wrapped around at this current point right here, and let's go ahead and get that latest radar loop. Seizure warning for those who are prone to flashing lights. I know some have epilepsy in my audience, so I want to make that very clear. This is what we were looking at about how long is this? 45 minutes ago. Let's go ahead and see how this progresses right here. As you can see, okay, this is going to be a little difficult, but as you can see, you're already seeing all this convection firing up, and you're already starting to see this convection really wrap around that center right here. That's where the center is right there. Now you're starting to see that convection finally starting to wrap around. That is a very terrible sign right there. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys this. At least as guys at Storms United, I'm going to go ahead and pull up this satellite image and show them that to kind of get their thoughts and opinions while I am recording this video, just so that way I can monitor the chats, because it's been very active in Storms United right now. So I just sent it to them. I kind of multitasking while I'm recording, so I do apologize for that, but I wanted to send it to our guys to kind of see some analysis and kind of get their opinions on that, and hopefully as I'm recording this I can get some opinions typed in right now. But regardless of that, here's what we have going on with the track models and the intensity models. Track models have been exploding throughout much of this time. We're already at 80 knots right now as of 18Z. Several models want this to get up to a Category 5 hurricane. Majority of them Cat 4. That's insane, and that's just a huge escalation from what we saw previously, and it's not a good situation at all for the people who are tuning in from Florida. Intensity guidance has been absolutely exploding at this current point, and I think the NHC is ultimately going to go either 130 or 140 as the max at this next advisory. Now, the main question is, Will this make landfall as a slightly weaker storm? Will this undergo an eyewall replacement cycle, which in this case would be a worst case scenario because, first of all, Milton is a very small storm right now, and if it undergoes an eyewall replacement cycle, it's going to greatly expand the storm size, and then it's going to not only strengthen some more, it's not only going to start intensifying again, it's going to have a much better structure to counter the shear that is expected to increase with, and potentially kind of blunt some of that weakening that may be forecast by several model runs. Track models have also not been very good. They've shifted more to the north. Before, we were seeing a further and further southward shift, but now we're seeing a little bit of a further northward shift, with some models having this heading back to Tampa Bay. The majority of the models, the model consensus actually, wants this to hit Tampa Bay head on right now, which would be some awful news. They have not received a major hurricane impact since 1921, and that's 103 years ago for those who can do the math. But yeah, that's not very good to look at. And part of the reason for this northward shift is because of how fast the system is intensifying. The faster these hurricanes intensify, the further away from the equator they tend to go. It's called the Coriolis effect, where basically if you have enough rotation, and due to the Earth's rotation, you have a system that's rapidly intensifying, it gets pulled away from the equator and towards the poles due to Coriolis. And that's part of the reason why we're seeing this shift back to the north, because before, the majority of the runs want this to impact around the Sarasota region, maybe even as far south as Fort Myers. By the way, if you're in Fort Myers and Port Charlotte, you still need to pay very close attention to this, because this could very well shift back south and hit you guys. But the models are now pushing back to the north and want this to impact Tampa Bay head on, which would be an absolute worst case scenario, and we do not want to see that. But we will keep you updated on that, and we will give you more data and information as it comes out. Milton isn't the only thing we are watching, so I wanted to get the first 11 or so minutes of this video out of the way so I could talk about Milton with you guys. And then I'm going to move on to Kirk, Leslie, this area of interest out here, which I can pull up the 7-day graphic right here to show you guys. And then we're going to go ahead and get straight into the models, because I know a lot of people are wondering how powerful is this going to be. Normally, in a scenario like this, I would have more time to look at analysis and do all that stuff. But because we have 3 hurricanes out in the Atlantic, I'm going to go ahead and briefly go over Kirk, briefly go over Leslie, if I have time, go over the conditions, and then get to the models and what they are saying, and then maybe input the conditions right there. Kirk has weakened down to a Category 2 hurricane with winds of 100 miles per hour. It's moving northeast at 25 miles per hour. It is undergoing to an extratropical cyclone, transition right now as it heads towards Europe. It's going to be a very powerful storm for those tuning in from the United Kingdom, from Ireland, from Spain, from France, from the Benelux region, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. And especially potentially Germany, as well as Denmark, potentially Poland, Sweden, and other parts of Scandinavia right there. This is going to be a very powerful storm for you guys. So let's go ahead and pull up the public advisory. Hurricane force winds extend outward 115 miles. Tropical storm force winds extend outward 290 miles. Pressure of 960 millibars. Discussion real quickly. Expected to continue to gradually weaken. Expected to get down to an extratropical cyclone in the next 36 hours. So we're going to have to pay very close attention to that. Next one we have is Hurricane Leslie. Now a 90 mile per hour hurricane at this current point. The pressure of 982 millibars. Very small hurricane, actually. It's hurricane force winds. Despite it being stronger than Milton right now, it's only 15 miles from the center at this current point in time. So here's what we got right here, and we can go ahead and talk about the discussion very quickly. The hurricane has been able to maintain its core even though wind shear is gradually increasing over the system. Leslie has about 12 more hours before going into an increasingly unfavorable environment. It is expected to now get back up to 100 miles per hour before rapidly weakening and then gradually getting down to tropical storm strength for the next few days or so. So ultimately, we're getting down to a 60 mile per hour tropical storm in the next 48 hours, and it's not going to be that much of a concern, not nearly as much of a concern as Milton is out here in the Gulf of Mexico. I still want to pay attention to it, though, mainly because of shipping concerns in other areas that I am paying attention to at this current point. So that's what we have going on out in the Atlantic with Kirk and Leslie. We also have this area of interest that could be affecting the Cabo Verde Islands. So if you're tuning in from there, you're going to want to pay attention to this. this. A tropical wave is expected to move off the west coast of Africa in a few days. Some development of this system is possible thereafter, while it moves westward or west-northwestward across the eastern tropical Atlantic. This system is expected to move near or over the Cabo Verde Islands on Wednesday and Thursday, and interests there should monitor the progress. 30% probability of development in the next 7 days, so we're going to have to keep close eyes on it. A lot of potential rain showers, a lot of gusty winds are the main threats for the Cabo Verde Islands, so you're going to want to pay very close attention to that. Let's go ahead and pull up some model runs because we have a lot to talk about in terms of what we have going on with Milton. Let's go ahead and pull up the H-Wharf, starting with that. And we have the 12Z runs right here just to kind of give you a general idea of what we're looking at. Here's the 12Z H-Wharf right now, rapidly escalating, rapidly intensifying, gets down to a 938 millibar hurricane. That gets up to a high-end Cat 3, low-end Cat 4, and then it moves north of the Yucatan Peninsula. This island off of the Yucatan Peninsula right here, according to the H-Wharf, is going to get greatly impacted by this hurricane, potentially getting into the eyewall as a Category 4 hurricane moves through, enters the Central Gulf. It appears that it undergoes an eyewall replacement cycle, and then it starts to head towards Florida. And the H-Wharf wants the system moving north of Tampa Bay, which would be really bad news, because that would push a bunch of the storm surge into Tampa Bay, and that would just make things even worse than Helene and Tampa Bay, although they're still recovering in a lot of areas right there. Expected to make landfall north of the Tampa Bay region, move south of Jacksonville, north of Orlando, and then be a much larger system off the coast of the Carolinas. That's the H-Wharf. Here's the H-Mon we have for Milton right now. H-Mon has the system continuing to rapidly intensify, rapidly escalate as it moves towards the Yucatan Peninsula. It is expected to make landfall on this one island off the Yucatan Peninsula. I'm not 100% sure what's going on right now. I am going to take a look at that and figure it out. But regardless, that is a high-end Category 4 hurricane potentially making landfall right there. And if you're tuning in from over there, you're going to want to watch this very, very closely. And yeah, it's just ultimately just not a good situation to even deal with in the first place. It's off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. It's a chain of islands, I believe it is. I'm not 100% sure. Let me know in the comments down below. But regardless of that, high-end Category 4 hurricane, pressure of 929 millibars, which is absolutely insane. Then it undergoes an eyewall replacement cycle, and then it weakens gradually due to wind shear, and then as it approaches the Tampa Bay region, makes landfall over there as a 973 millibar system, and then moves over Florida and just kind of gets gradually more disorganized afterward. Here's the Halves A run. Halves A continues to see a lot of problems. Okay, that's for Kirk, not for Milton. Come on, Patrick, you got this now. But regardless of that, the Halves A run has the system rapidly organizing, rapidly developing, gets down to a 919 millibar system. The Halves A wants this to get to a Category 5 hurricane, and this is wind speeds of 152 knots at the surface. That's about 175 miles per hour. Just as it's moving near the Yucatan Peninsula, then it starts to weaken a bit as it moves towards Florida, but then it gets down to a 908 millibar system with 170 mile per hour winds as it approaches Tampa Bay, but due to wind shear, it starts to quickly weaken as it heads towards that region, makes landfall just to the north of there, and then moves out from there. So that's the Halves A run, and it has been a bit shifting more and more to the north due to Coriolis force, so we're going to have to pay attention to that. Halves B run, continuing to rapidly escalate, organize, and develop right here, gets down to a 917 millibars. It's a Category 5 hurricane as it moves close to the Yucatan Peninsula. 908, 901, that's where it bottoms out. The pressure does, 901 millibars. The Halves A and Halves B are overdoing it. I'm going to tell you right now, the Halves A and Halves B are overdoing it. No, this is not going to get to the sub 910s. This is not going to do that. It's probably its max pressure it'll probably get to is around the 920s or so, and that's my opinion. Do not take it as gospel. I'm just giving you my opinion on this. But regardless of that, we have a pretty serious situation going on as it approaches Tampa Bay. All these runs want this to make landfall over there, while a lot of the other hurricane runs do want this further to the south around Sarasota, those areas right there. But regardless, if you are anywhere in western Florida or anywhere really in the Florida peninsula, you're going to have to watch this very closely because this is going to be a very destructive storm regardless of intensity. It's going to potentially produce a lot of storm surge. It's going to potentially produce a lot of winds, potentially produce a lot of damage, all that stuff right there that we're going to have to pay attention to, and we're going to have to keep you updated on it here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But regardless of that, this is something we're going to be watching. This is a rapidly evolving situation, and we're going to have to pay very close attention to it here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Shout out to Daniel as an official sponsor of the Pat's Path Predictor channel. If you want to be a sponsor and support the channel more directly, be sure to join the Patreon. It's the first link in the description down below. Also, if you want to come talk Tropics with us and ask questions and get involved in our conversations behind the scenes, be sure to join the Storms United Discord server. Link to that is right over there. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.